Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of The Juice. I'm your host, Drew McDougall. We got a great episode for you today. To begin this episode, I will be talking about the documentary Social Dilemma. This documentary I've actually been meaning to cover for a while now. It's directed by Jeff Orlowski, and it tackles issues of social media, tech giants, and really just a lot on social media. And he dives deep into a few interviews with old Facebook employees, Twitter employees, tech giants, software engineers, software developers, people in Silicon Valley, lawyers. He really gets some good juicy details about the software side of our social media and some of the behind the scenes stuff. And he sort of talks about Mark Zuckerberg and lots of variations amongst lots of different social media aspects. I actually personally have met Jeff Orlowski. I saw a rough cut of Chasing Coral at his place through a common friend, Zach Rago. Many of you may know Zach Rago through his starring role in Chasing Coral. Zach actually acted in a few of my student films, and he was actually he saved my butt in the film school a few times. I actually studied Jeff Orlowski's film Chasing Ice as an environmental student, and so did Zach. So we were both familiar with his work. We referenced the film in one of my student films, and Jeff is actually a pretty good guy, and I feel like he's on the same page as us. He knows all the stuff we were talking about global warming, climate change, the melting ice sheets, the coral bleaching, El Nino, La Nina, and electronic waste and international climate change treaties. And Jeff is really just on the same page as us. And it's really nice to hear other people talk about these issues, because these are some very serious issues that haunts everyone and society, all of humanity. And Jeff is really a talented director and knows how to make a good film. In this film, Social Dilemma, you get some reenactments, you get some animated segments about what goes on behind closed doors, and it critiques a bit of the whole social media aspect. I'm a bit dated when it comes to that. Social media really came about when I was in about middle school. That's when Facebook and MySpace and Twitter were really kind of starting off. Then by the time we were in high school, it really started to flourish. And then in college, and then while in college, everyone got a smartphone, and that's when everyone had high definition images and the swipe screen. And that really changed the whole social media and completely oversaturated our generation. I think this film is very well done. And actually, another actor I worked with, Catalina, she acted in one of my films, and she actually acted in this film as well. So that's great to see her out working, and It's funny how small of a world we live in, because I feel like I keep running into Jeff all the time. I gotta wonder what Jeff thinks of me, because when we met, he had just caught me at a weird ending point of my college career, and I might have been just extremely stressed out, and there was a whole bunch of drama, and he might have caught a bit of sourness related to the end of my college career. So I hope that hasn't tarnished my first impression, and I would actually be really stoked to work on a project with him in the future if we get the opportunity to collaborate. I definitely would take that opportunity. He's a very talented director. Go check it out. It's called The Social Dilemma. It's on Netflix. It is a must-watch of this year for sure. For the music section of the show, I wanted to bring up Ed Sheeran's new music video, Afterglow. I really enjoyed watching the music video. I have watched Ed Sheeran's music videos before, and I actually really enjoy his music, and his music videos match his style well. This music video isn't overly complicated, and I really think just the basic guitar and kind of the stormy background is leaves you with a certain chills down your spine. And I think he's a very talented musician, and sometimes I think he gets overlooked, which is one of the reasons why I felt it necessary to showcase his work. And let's take a listen.
Oh, I will hold on to the afterglow. Oh, I will hold on to the afterglow. The weather outside's changing. The leaves are buried under 6 inches of white. The radio is playing iron and wine.
Ed Sheeran is definitely known for his more somber tones, and has his acoustic setup. I've checked out his music videos before. As a music video director, I run into his work all the time. He's always hyperlinked in a bunch of different playlists, and I run into his work all the time. And I always check out his visual styles and the sounds that he makes. Definitely, if you would like to see more, go check out his music video, Afterglow by Ed Sheeran. For this week's segment in the visual arts, I have chosen to explore an artist. Her name is Helen Beard. She is currently being displayed in the MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art. Some of her work I will be showing has explicit material, and so if you are below 4th grade, I would suggest fast forwarding. The first painting I will go over is called The Butterfly Effect. This one is really, it explores, it mostly looks like two humans indulging in a romantic kiss. It's tough to tell the genders of these people. It's very gender neutral in the fact that it's hard to tell who the people are, if they're a girl, a man and a woman, two women, or two men. It's a very ambiguous approach, and the abstracted lines really takes away their gender identity. So they just look like two humans, and I chose her because she had really good color palettes and simplistic lines. It's very clear lined tones of definition. It's not much gradient or shaping, and the color palette is dramatic. It's very unrealistic. It's very expressionistic. This next image is explicit and has nudity. If that offends you, please fast forward to the next segment. This image is entitled "Take Good Care of Yourself." It's actually my favorite painting by Helen Beard. Obviously, it's a depiction of a woman pleasing herself. I think the use of abstract lines and contrasted colors really downplays the explicit nature of this painting. I think it really is just colored shapes combined on a canvas, and the only reason it's considered explicit is because you as a human have decided to see it as explicit. Really, those are just shapes, colored shapes and lines on a canvas, and represents human expression and can be viewed as female expressionism. I think the artwork it's bold, and I almost didn't decide to go with this artist because of the explicit sexual nature of the portraits and the chances of me obviously being censored. However, I think through the abstract lines, it's actually already censored. And it's abstract enough to not even really be a specific person other than abstract shapes. And really, it's in your mind that you decide to see something of a sexual nature. Not many artists really have the guts to do a portrayal like this. Obviously, in the art world, censorship is huge, and sometimes it's really hard to make a painting or a profound art piece that explores sensitive subjects because there's so much censorship. So I really commend Helen Beard for capturing this depiction and allowing her audience to reflect on female sensuality. I think this subject never gets talked about and is actually very repressed, and I don't think it should be that repressed. I think Americans and their audience should be much more secure and should be able to handle this type of image. I think it's inappropriate that people oftentimes can't handle images like this. And I think it's very reflective of America's sexual education or lack of sexual education. So I may have chosen Helen Beard's work to help me segment into the next subject. This segment is explicit. There's no explicit imagery, but if you can't handle the subjectivity, please either fast forward or stop watching. You have the option to opt out. Anyway, if you can handle the subjectivity, definitely keep watching. This is a very important issue, and it's really been bothering me that no one seems to be able to talk about it. This subject I would like to bring up is infant genitalia mutilation. Often this subject gets referred to as circumcision, both of the female and of the male. Often, majority of the time, they're infants. This is an especially cruel and heinous practice. The reason for this being, infants don't have the ability to legally consent to this type of surgery. This is a cosmetic surgery and is considered aesthetic. There is actually no health benefits to this surgery. The practice of circumcision is actually considered medical fraud. It is fraud in the fact that the practice does not need to happen. The practice is how it actually leaves the babies in worse health than they were before the surgery. In America, this surgery is usually only performed on males. It's actually illegal to do it on females. It's an especially cruel practice done out of religious purification for religious purposes. Usually the mothers are under heavy anesthesia related to birth, and they don't have the proper state of mind to consent to this procedure. This procedure is actually banned majority worldwide except for America. And usually the doctors who do this are extremely misleading, and they don't give the full proper information, and usually the parents that are involved don't have proper knowledge on the subject to know that they should opt out. They think it's standard practice, everyone does it, so why shouldn't they? Well, there's a reason why these doctors keep doing this. They have huge financial incentive. There's actually $1 billion market surrounding infant foreskins. They get sold to different companies who transform the human remains usually into hand lotions, which makes you gotta wonder what is in our hand lotions. The doctors usually get up to $100,000 per foreskin, which is why they have financial reason to do it. This is human organ trafficking. A lot of this never gets talked about through the media, and it's extremely immoral, and the chances of a botched circumcision are high. And these doctors usually just trim off the rest of the remains and turn the boy into a girl, and then they raise that child as a female. And that child may still have the gender identity of a male and may still be attracted to females even though he was raised a female. Obviously, this has huge psychological effects on the child growing up, and it completely ruins their ability. It really breaks my heart, and I'm actually holding back tears just talking about it. This issue is terrible, and it needs to stop. I can't even believe this practice goes on. It's going on now as we speak. And it's irreversible damage. It's flat out medical fraud, and it is ruining our society. It is ruining modern romance. You have to wonder why male fertility is low, and it's actually a form of violence. It is cruelty. It is inhumane. Think about all the children who have been botched and they don't have the opportunity to get their genitals back. Granted, most parents lack the sex education to know that it's bad and what it does, and they're acting out of tradition and what's suggested to them from their doctor. And the doctor really, as a trained medical profession, knows that their patient hasn't gone to medical school and knows that they don't even have the legal right to actually make that decision. So they're completely illegal, and it's a breach of their medical practice. Usually the statute of limitations for these kind of issues is only extends to 7 years. So as a 7-year-old, you should already know that your foreskin has been taken and that there's medical consequences, side effects, your sexual gratification is robbed from you, and certain health aspects are also robbed from you. 7 years old. You haven't even developed into a full-grown adult. You're likely a virgin. Usually the adults come to terms in this, usually in their early 20s after losing their virginity. And usually the adults are usually pretty pissed off that this happened to them, but it never gets talked about because of how taboo the subjectivity is and our inability to comfortably talk about issues of sexual reproduction, gender identity, relationships, healthy parenting, and healthy medical practice. And a government that enacts policies designed to help their citizens, not hinder them. It is wrong on so many levels. I'm sorry, that's a very sensitive subject. I just had to speak about this subject. I hope you enjoy the next segment of the show entitled At the Park. Dear Coloradans, now more than ever, our appreciation for Colorado's landscape is accompanied by the realization that it cannot be taken for granted. We cannot let forest fires, land loss, and climate change become Colorado's new identity. This reality affects us all, the outdoor enthusiasts, the ranchers, the local businesses. With so much at stake, you need a solution. 30 by 30 is a science-based campaign to protect 30% of America's lands and waters by 2030. Join us in pursuing the 30 by 30 goal by going to conservationco.org. Welcome to this section of At the Park. For this week's episode, I want to talk about cymatic waves. This has been something I've been thinking about quite a bit and trying to learn more and trying to understand. My interest in the subject obviously began at some point through filmmaking and sound. A good example of cymatics would be if you've ever put a speaker next to water and you've seen the water vibrate into interesting patterns. Obviously, this is the best example. You might have seen some demos online. I've just been fascinated by different frequencies and its effect on water, obviously different materials, and what it means and what it's doing. Through filmmaking, at some point you're watching me right now because light waves are bouncing off of me, going into the camera, and then they have been uploaded and you're now viewing them. Obviously I don't know who's watching this, so, but you know who you can see me, I can't see you. So that's kind of an interesting thing, kind of a directional aspect. We're talking about light and sound waves. Light waves move at a much higher frequency, and sound moves at a much slower frequency. Sure, you know the speed of sound is much slower than the speed of light. So, but at some point, light and sound are almost the same thing, just different frequencies, to the point where sound doesn't even have light and light doesn't even really have sound. So they're just like, there's just a wide array of frequencies. I have become fascinated by this in terms of philosophy and how exactly is the light bouncing off of me, going into the camera, into your viewer's eyes, and even the light missing your eyes, bouncing off the wall behind you. How is that affecting the universe? The space between atoms and electrons and protons and neutrons is a huge space, and they're actually all vibrating at certain frequencies on a molecular level and atomic level, and when magnified to different levels creates different materials, different ionic patterns. This creates air, water, rocks, metal, wood. All of these things are atoms vibrating at an atomic level at some point. The atoms flashed at the right moment. I could probably put my hand through this table. They have plenty of space between them to move like that. At some point, it occurred to me that brain activity resembles cymatic waves. When I have a thought, at some point, this whole speech is just my brain telling my mouth to move, say these certain things, and create sound waves, and you guys can understand me because we're all on the same frequency, which is the English language. I remember seeing a quote, and it said, if an egg cracks due to internal forces, life begins. If an egg cracks due to external forces, life ends. And I think that's a very profound statement, and I found it very inspirational in the fact that huge things come from within. This really reminded me of internal thought. Much like the egg breaking from the inside, internal thought begins from within. And we project our thoughts out into our universe. Like right now, I decided to come down here and film a bit for the show, which at some point was a mere thought in my head. And now I'm here, it is manifested into reality, and now I'm speaking to you from Cherry Creek Reservoir. That brainwave that led me here resembles certain cymatic waves. Why did I choose this park versus another park? Just followed a certain brainwave. This resembles cymatic waves, being that my thoughts are kind of like a pebble dropping into a river or a lake, creating waves that radiate outward in a circular pattern. I think these waves, and what exactly is the frequency of those waves? If I dropped a bigger rock in the water, are those waves moving at a different speed? We were talking about energy being dispersed into water. But such is life. So how do your thoughts, the frequency of your thoughts affect the outside world? I have been trying to manifest my thoughts, and I've been doing this through deep meditations where I try to focus my mind and I try to project my reality onto the tangible reality that we have. It is these brain waves and these light waves that affect things on a atomic level. Your thoughts in your brain affect, at some point all of reality just barely exists. We're all just kind of a vibrating frequency in the abyss that we call the universe. The fabric that we stand on, this realm, this dimension that we occupy, is really just a series of vibrational waves. And how can we use those vibrational waves to our advantage? I believe internal thought is the key to mastering reality. We have the ability to manipulate our reality. Usually it's through our own means, our hands, our body. We use our body to make things, do things, carry out what we want. But I think there's bigger things that we can accomplish through internal thought and mindfulness. I remember a yoga teacher said this. While we were finishing up the session, she had said to view yourself as a bird watching yourself from afar. And that struck me as profound words of wisdom. And I realized I can actually view myself from the eye of a bird from far away. And I'm sure you guys can too. That's really the beginning of an enlightened self, a third eye, knowing your place in the universe, and knowing that you can see through other people's eyes. You can see from a tree's perspective. You can see from a fish's perspective, a bird's perspective, your dog's perspective, your friend's perspective. We are not just stuck to our own bodies, but by seeing through other people, it's really an extension of your mind and your ability to imagine and place yourself in that spot and to remove your mind from your body and to have an external mind. And that external mind is where we begin to shape our reality. I know sometimes it can be frustrating trying to get what you need, get what you want, even know what you need and know what you want. I believe all of you should practice mindfulness and begin by focusing your internal third eye. Become aware of the universe that we occupy, this dimension. Why are we in this dimension? It's not like any of us really chose to be born. We just merely were born and now we exist. And now we can experience, and we know that this realm, this dimension exists. Is this dimension really just a projection of our subconscious? Are we really just internal beings, internal energies living inside of a bubble like projection? Where does this universe go when we leave? We were popped into this dimension. Are we just, what happens to us when we leave? Are we going to pop into another dimension after this? Are there higher levels of life? Are we just vibrating at a certain energy frequency, and once we leave, we move into another realm, another dimension, a higher dimension? Do we stay in this dimension? Or do we simply cease to exist after our life ends? That kind of dives deep into certain religious beliefs, an afterlife, heaven, hell. I think it is through our vibrational frequencies that our lives are possible.